in heavy ion collisions. I've actually given a very similar talk at the INT workshop about a month ago. And if you attended that workshop, that means you are already familiar with the slides that I prepared today. Anyway, let's begin. Okay, jets are a very well-known probe in hot dense QCD medium, and we understand the jet's vacuum shower very well with the protective QCD framework. And once these jets are produced in heavy ion collisions, they experience elastic scattering with the medium and medium-induced gluon emissions. So if the vacuum shower is modified in heavy ion collisions, that means that it interacts with the medium. So that's usually called jet quenching. And jet quenching have a few consequences in jet observables. And they are usually summarized with three different statements here. So one is the jet energy loss, and the other is a jet substructure modification and jet deflection. So these colors are kind of shown in this picture on the right. Excuse me. And by studying jets in heavy ion collisions, we are trying to answer a few questions. And those questions are listed here. So I'll just read out loud those questions. So how does QGP respond to the external out of equilibrium probe? And how can we use jets to probe the microstructure of the QGP? What is the resolution scale of the medium and how can we measure that? And also how to connect measurements and calculations for QCD properties, and what can you learn from the mass dependence of jet quenching, and so on. So there are many questions that we can kind of see the answer from the jet measurement in heavy ion collisions. And also there are jet observables. There are quite many jet observables. And each jet observable is connected to one or multiple questions listed in the above. So each jet observable, each jet observable, we can probe different aspects of jet quenching. So however, jet quenching is jet quenching, so they are the same jet quenching. So we measure the same physics in multiple ways with different observables. So in the end, we may need some consistency among what we find with the jet measurements. So today, my talk is ordered based on different types of jet observables. So at the beginning, I could arrange or organize my talk based on like a given a question. These are the results related to the question. So I could organize my talk in that way, but I think organizing my talk in this order, based on observable by observable base, that is more efficient to deliver my message. So the order of this talk is based on different types of jet observables. So, and I will spend majority of my time on jet spectra and jet substructure observables, but I'll mention a few words on other jet observables at the end of the slides. So let's begin with the jet spectra. So spectrum measurement is one of the most basic measurements in heavy ion collision, heavy ion physics, and also in high energy physics. So the first thing is the inclusive jet spectra. So when we say inclusive jet, that means we just measure every jet in heavy ion event. So inclusive jet spectra is the basic measurement of jet yield suppression. And the jet yield suppression is usually quantified with the jet RAA defined here. And that is the spectra in heavy ion collisions over the PP reference scaled by this TAA. So we've been seeing many publications on jet RAA starting from the early days of the LHC. And I picked 3 plots here on this slide, one from CMS, one from Atlas, and one from ALICE. I believe they are one of those recent publications from each collaboration. And the CMS one is a 2.76 TeV, and other two are 5 TeV. And in particular, if you just look at the ALICE one, the most recent one, you can see the, through the whole 3 plots, we can see that jets are suppressed. Jet yields are suppressed in central heavy ion collisions. And in particular, in the last slide, you can see these green markers are from ALICE, and other colored bands are from calculations. So most models reasonably describe the data, but if you want to distinguish models, we probably need more differential measurements. And in the same publication by ALICE, they also reported R equal 0.2, which is on the left, and R equal 0.4, which is on the right, the two different radius jets. And also they showed 5 TeV and 2.76 TeV results on the same panel. You can see that most of the data points are overlapping each other, which means that there's no clear jet radius dependence or collision energy dependence at the LHC at standard jet radius. And also, if you just remember this jet RAA value around 0.4 to 0.6, these RAA values from different collaborations are very, very similar. So ALICE, CMS, Atlas, they all have the very similar jet RAA value. Although they have very different, not very different, but different jet rapidity coverage and different systematics, but they do show similar jet RAA values. And we can even do the same measurement at the rig energies. And last year, STAR reported or published the first jet RAA paper, the inclusive charged particle jet spectra at 200 GeV in gold-gold collision. And in their RAA, it is with respect to the Pythia, but the RAA values are similar to what LHC experiments showed. But in order to have a direct comparison with the rig energy and the LHC energies, they also showed jet RCP. So similar to jet RAA, RCP is comparison between central and peripheral collisions. So these two panels here show R equal 0.2 jets, and the right panel is R equal 0.3 jets. And there are blue and red in these plots. So the red is from ALICE at 2.76 TeV, and the blue one is from STAR at 200 GeV. And also there are like closed marker and open markers. And the closed marker is a bright blue STAR, and this closed red are from jets, and these open markers are from charged hadrons. So if you compare the STAR results and ALICE results, although they are in very different collision energies, the level of suppression between two collision energies are very, very similar. And also the level of suppression is also comparable with the charged hadron suppression. Although the spectra themselves, the shapes are different, but the level of suppressions are more or less very similar. So this is my kind of summary for the inclusive jet spectra. So we found a very consistent and similar level of jet yield suppression at different collision energies from rig to the LHC, and for the different R, like R equal 0.2 to 0.4, which are the standard jet radius. Everything is very consistent. And that they were inclusive jet spectra, but now we can do the semi-inclusive jet spectra as well. So when we do the inclusive jet measurements, as I said, we measure every jet in heavy ion events, but in semi-inclusive jet spectra or semi-inclusive jet measurements, that means that we measure jets in the recoil region of high PT trigger particle. So we first find a high PT trigger particle, and in the recoil region, we just measure all jets in the recoil regions. So there are a few benefits of using semi-inclusive measurements, because in the semi-inclusive measurements, there are correlated contribution and uncorrelated contribution with respect to the trigger particle. So if you think of the back-to-back jets, this trigger particle is a proxy of one jet, and on the other side, there are jets directly related to the back-to-back jets, but some have nothing to do with the back-to-back jets. So by using like a mixed event technique, which is described in this paper, we can effectively remove the uncorrelated contribution in the recoil region. So the largest benefit is we are able to access to lower jet PT. So in the inclusive jet measurement, the lowest jet PT reported by the LHC was around 50 GeV, and the lowest jet PT reported by STAR was around 10 to 15 GeV. But with the semi-inclusive jet measurement, we can, in principle, we can achieve to the 0 GeV. So in 2017, STAR has reported the semi-inclusive jet spectra measurement, and Alice has reported in 2015. They are kind of similar, but slightly different in technique-wise. And the jet spectra suppression, spectrum suppression was quantified with the ICP and IAA. So they are very similar to RCP and RAA, but they are just a ratio of jet yields in the recall region in central to peripheral or central to PP distributions. And a similar level of suppression via ICP to charged particle jet RCP at 200 GeV were observed. So still, you can even see that this level of suppressions are pretty much consistent. But another benefit of using semi-inclusive jet spectra is we can do further, or we can do more differential measurement using different trigger particle. So in the previous paper, we used charged particle as our trigger particles, but we can now use identified trigger particles. And one example is we can use direct photon or pi0 as trigger particles. The direct photon and pi0 have very different characteristics. And by comparing these two results, we may, different trigger particles may represent different in-medium path lengths and different color factor and different parton energies. So they have a widely different characteristics in heavy ion collisions. So we have a preliminary result on the IAA for pi0 jet and direct photon jet, but the similar level of suppression between direct photon and pi0 triggers were observed with R equal 0.2 within uncertainties. And in the upcoming publication, we will also show the R equal 0.4, and we will include that in the publication. And this is the summary of the inclusive and semi-inclusive jet spectra. It is kind of summary. They are, the main message is that this level of suppression is consistent, but also there is other way that we quantify the jet yield suppression. So for the RAA or IAA, so this purple color is PP and this green color is AA. So we usually translate, the RAA or IAA, they are the vertical translation. They correspond to vertical translation. But you can also quantify the suppression in the horizontal translation, with the horizontal translation. We call it delta PT. So we can just measure the amount of horizontal translation to quantify the jet yield suppression. And this plot shows multiple channels jet yield suppression with quantified with the delta PT. So the first 4 columns are from RIC, and the last one is from LHC. And these first 4 bins are from direct photon jet, pi0 jet, inclusive jet, and hadron jet measurements. And this is the hadron jet measurement from the LHC. And at RIC, similar energy loads for different channels of measurements were observed. But at the LHC, the delta PT is much higher, but you have to note that the jet PT ranges are different from the RIC energy. So it's a 60 to 100 GeV, while at RIC it's a 10 to 20 GeV. So we can add further more bins. We can quantify other jet spectrum measurements in this plot, and that's probably coming in the future. And this is my last slide about the jet spectra. So this is the inclusive jet spectra at larger jet radius from CMS. So jet RAA at higher jet radius is a very interesting topic, I think, because people may think wider jets probably lose more energies, so they are more suppressed. But on the other hand, these quenched energies usually move toward larger R, so maybe the suppression is even weaker for the wider jets. So there may be competitive physics mechanism regarding wide jet, large angle jet. So CMS reported jet RAA for R equal 0.2 to R equal 1 and up to jet PT 1 TeV. And kind of surprisingly, there is no strong dependence on jet radius, and they are all consistent up to R equal 1 and the high PT. And this one is the different colors that represent different centrality. And on the right plot, it's at only 0 to 10% centrality, but model calculations are shown. And you can see significant tension between models. And these results can work as further constraints on the underlying jet quenching mechanisms. So these are the summary of jet spectrum measurements in heavy ion collisions. And now let's move to jet substructure observables. So with the jet substructure observable, well, probably the most basic question can be how the jet shower is modified when a jet transfers the medium. Also, the interesting question is, with these three different jets, so it's a very simplified picture. So the first jet has a kind of wide two prongs in the Parton fermentation. And the second one, it has a very narrow fermentation. And the third one has a very asymmetric fermentation. And then the question that we can ask is, do these jets quench differently in QCD medium, or do these jets quench similarly? That's the maybe that's an interesting question. And this question is directly related to the resolution scale of the medium. So if the resolution scale is small enough, the medium will look at these first two jets kind of differently. But if the resolution scale is large, then the medium will consider these two jets more or less the same thing, same entity. So to study jet substructure observable, how to measure them. So recently we are using substrate algorithm, but this is not the first time that we are looking at the substructure. So more conventionally or more traditionally, there were measurements using ratio of jet cross-section for small r and large r. And it gives us the information about transverse jet energy profile. And even in the recent jet measurement by STAR, they compare the spectra between R equal 0.2 and R equal 0.4. So by taking this ratio in the peripheral collision and central collision, they could compare the transverse jet energy profile change between peripheral and central collision. However, you see that they are more or less the same, so no significant modification of the transverse jet profile was observed due to quenching. Well, this is the one message from this measurement, but more recently, most of the substructure measurements are using or based on the jet by jet substructure measurement, which is using substructure. Anyway, both ways need to be understood coherently. That's the main message. So a slide regarding soft drop. If you have been in heavy ion field, you've been seeing a similar slide at least once. So jet soft drop is the jet grooming algorithm using this condition. It's an iterative grooming algorithm. And in PP, it's a very effective way to remove the QCD background. So it basically removes the large angle soft radiation. And now we want to apply the soft drop algorithm in heavy ion physics. However, in heavy ion physics, this is a bit problematic because background fluctuations in heavy ion environment result in an incorrect splitting being identified by the grooming algorithm. And it gives the significant off-diagonal components in response of substructure variables. So an example of this statement is the above plot. So the x-axis is the PP level RG, so PP RG. But once we embed this PP event into heavy ion environment, the measured RG in the heavy ion environment it's not really diagonal. There are significant off-diagonal components. So this has been a big problem in the field so far. And are we understanding what grooming does in heavy ion collisions? is one of the main questions that I can also think of. And my personal answer is we are not at the level that we are fully understanding what grooming does in heavy ion collision. And I don't think we can play with them with the comfort. We are not at that level. However, this doesn't mean that we can measure this jet substructure in heavy ion collision, because we developed several ways to measure jet substructure observable in heavy ion collisions. So there are mainly 4 different methods that the experimental collaborations have adopted. So first is no correction for background effects. So we don't correct anything, but we just compare heavy ion result and smeared PP result. And second method is we limit measurement condition. So the background is a problem, then we can just go to like lower background environment, such as using smaller jet radius, increased Z cut, and measure in semi-central collision instead of a central collision. So it's all like avoiding high background conditions. And the third method is utilizing subjets, which is a reclustering. So I'll discuss this in later slides. And the fourth one is using clustering sequence independent observable with semi-inclusive approach. So I'll just go one by one. So first is the no correction for background effects. So we don't correct in heavy ion level, but we just compare heavy ion result with the smeared PP result. So this was GG reported by CMS, reported in 2018. And this is a GG distribution for its centrality and PP. So small GG means that these 2 prongs have very asymmetric momentum. And the GG near 0.5 means that the 2 hard subjects, so the momentum between 2 subjects are comparable. And there are definitely centrality dependencies. So steeper GG distribution in central that collisions are observed. You see that the lower GG parts are more enhanced in central heavy ion collisions compared to PP. And this tells that we saw the parton splitting process is modified by the medium. So this is the conclusion. And that was the first method. We just don't correct anything. And second method is we limit the measurement condition in jet substructure measurements. So Alice earlier this year reported this paper. So in heavy ion, in central collision, like 0 to 10%, and the lower Z cut, we know that we have a significant background. So they just avoided those areas. So in the central collision, 0 to 10% collision, they use only small jet radius, and the Z cut is 0.2, which is larger than our nominal 0.1. And for the 30 to 50% centrality, which is the semi-central collision, they also could measure the same thing, GG here. And G is a fully unfolded data, and they compare with the PP. So GG distribution in lead-lead collisions are consistent with those of PP collision with experimental uncertainty. So you see that the ratio lead-lead over PP results are more or less at 1 for 2 different environments. And they also measure the theta G. This is a delta R, but it's same as the theta G. So in the theta G measurement, they saw suppression of large angles and enhancement of small angles. So you see that at the small angle in lead-lead is enhanced, but in the large angle in lead-lead is suppressed. So they are qualitatively described by models, which can be shown in here and here. So this is the second method to measure the jet substructure. The third method to measure this jet substructure is using subjects. So this is I borrowed it from Chen's slide from Quackmatter. So this is our jet, and what grooming, such as substruct does, is a large scale structure. So we just group based on 2 things. But the reclustering basically means that we cluster these jets with a smaller jet radius. So reclustering jets with smaller resolution parameter with the original jet constituents. And these subjects, such as these two smaller circles here, subjects are proxy for the hardest shower splitting. And the benefit of utilizing subjet is, compared to RG measurement, the theta assay, the subject, it has a much less off-diagonal component. So this is the problematic thing that we wanted to avoid. But using theta SJ, we just don't have that. So it makes the observable much more usable. And there is a paper by Star, which was submitted to arXiv last week. So what they did was from the R equal 0.4 jets, they recluster subjet with a jet constituent with R equal 0.1 jets. And the theta Sj is distance between two hardest subjects. So this is the original jet. Then we recluster with the smaller radius jet, and we just measure the distance between two hardest subjects. And as I showed in the plot here, there is almost no off-diagonal components. So the robustness of two subject observables facilitates a direct comparison between heavy ion and smeared PP. So we measured the ZSJ from heavy gold-gold collisions, and we compare with the smeared PP collisions. So there's no significant modification for ZSJ and theta SJ due to jet quenching, but we can do further. So this is the original question that I asked in earlier slides. So based on the theta SJ value, we can classify jets. So these are kind of wider jets, and these are narrow jets. So theta SJ between 0.1 and 0.2, that can make one class, and the theta SJ 0.2 to 0.3, they can make another class. So these are probably these kind of wider jets, and these are like narrower jets. So we can classify jets based on the substructure, and we can finally ask, is jet quenching different for two theta SJ classes? So basically the question is jet quenching different for wider jets or narrower jets? So now let's say we have these two classes of jets, and how do we quantify, or how do we see the jet quenching? So the observable that we chose is AJ, the dye-jet imbalance. Star has a previous publication, the PRL publication on the AJ, and for R equal 0.4 hardcore jet, which means the constituent is larger than 2 GeV particles, more dye-jet momentum imbalance is observed compared to PP. So this dye-jet momentum imbalance is from jet quenching, and it's a signature of jet quenching, and balance is recovered when soft constituents are included, which are matched jets. So such measurements did see the jet quenching signature, and we can repeat the measurement for different theta SJ classes. And these are the results. So different colors represent different theta SJ classes. So the black is the sum of blue and red, but blue are the narrower jets and red are wider jets. And we measure the AJ for hardcore jets and matched jets. But we didn't see any difference between blue and red. That means jet quenching works pretty much the same on wider jet and narrower jet. So no significant difference between theta SJ classes are observed. So no observational evidence of characteristic signature of coherent or decoherent energy loss. So this means that we saw the energy loss from a single color charge as it traversed the medium. So the resolution length or the coherent length of the medium is probably larger than the scale that this theta SJ can tell. So we have a larger medium coherence length. And also there is another measurement using subjets by Atlas. So it's slightly different. So Atlas measured the measurement using reclustered large R jets. So there's some procedure which is not really difficult. They first find R equal 0.2 jets with the anti-KT algorithm, and they only use the hard component. So PT rather than 35 GeV, they make a small angle jets. And with the list of small angle jets, they recluster the small angle jets with the large radius jet. So now they have the R equal 1 jets, and the components, constituents are R equal 0.2 jets. So now once they have the R equal 1 jets, they have to estimate the splitting scale of each jet, and to do so, they use subjets, and they recluster subjets with the KT algorithm. And the last step of the reclustering of the KT algorithm, they measure the two entities, D12. So this square root D12 is the proportional to the smaller PT square and the delta R between these two. So if the delta R is large, if the square root D12 is large, that means it has a much wider substructure. And if it is small, that means they are very, very narrower substructure. So this is a kind of picture. So this is a conventional jet, and this is a reclustered jet. So reclustered jets are different to the conventional R equal 1 jets because trimming and 35 GeV threshold remove all the soft components. So they are different jets. So the first thing is whether these reclustered jets experience the same jet quenching or not. So they first reported the jet RAA for reclustered jets. So different color represent different centrality, but these reclustered jets show qualitatively similar suppression to conventional R equal 0.4 jets. So now any splitting scale dependence can we see? So these reclustered jets have experienced the jet quenching, but depending on square root D12, do we have any differences? And I think this is a very interesting plot from Atlas. So as I said, different color represent different centrality, but now let's just focus on the black. And the x-axis is square root D12. So x-axis is very different at the very first bin, but other bins, they are pretty much similar. And the very first bin means square root D12 equals 0. So there's only a single isolated subjet. So not two subjects, but only a single isolated subject. So with a single subject, the RAA value is much larger than the others. So jet with a single subject are less suppressed than those with more than one subject. It's the same for different jet PT. And also they measure the same thing for as a function of the centrality and small square D12 dependence for jets with a complex substructure, which is the square D12 larger than 0. And the significant difference in jet quenching between jets with a single subjet and jets with a multi-prong structure are observed. I showed 3 different methods to measure the jet substructure, and this is the summary. And it looks kind of complicated. And if you really followed what I said, you may feel like, oh, there is some inconsistency or some incoherent things going on in the jet substructure measurement. I'll tell what they are. So let's compare CMS GG versus ALICE GG and star ZSJ. In the CMS GG, in heavy ion collision, it's modified, but in ALICE and star, they are not modified. And the comparison with the smeared PP was done in star and CMS, but the ALICE one is fully unfolded. Anyway, the important part is in the CMS, the GG looks like modified, but in ALICE and star, GG or GSJ do not look like they are modified. They are not the same. And also in the theta SJ, let's compare ALICE theta G and star theta SJ. So they are just comparing this narrower or wider the entity to quantify narrowness or the wideness. And in ALICE, they are fully unfolded, and in star, it's comparing with the smeared PP. And in ALICE, the theta G looks like it is modified in heavy ion collision, but in star, theta SJ are not modified in heavy ion collision. Oh, they are also not consistent. That's maybe your impression. Also go to the last one, star theta SJ class versus Atlas square root D12 class. So they measure the jet quenching for different classes of the theta SJ or square root D12. between wider jet and narrower jet. So Atlas is a fully unfolded. Star is a comparison with the smeared PP, but Star tells, oh, it is a theta Sj independent, while Atlas say, oh, it has a dependence on scalar D1 too. So you may wonder why they are all inconsistent. Why are they all different? That's a very natural question, but I think the message is hidden in the details. First of all, comparing GG and GSJ, or theta G or theta Sj, they are similar, but they are not the same jet substructure observable. By definition, they are not the same. And also, depending on the collaboration, there can be different bias from soft-drop selective jet versus star hardcore matched jets versus Atlas reclustered jet. So depending on how they select jets, there can be some bias in each jet population from each collaboration. And also, comparing LHC and star or different collaboration at the LHC, different collision energy and jet kinematics. So these differences may contribute as well. So my kind of thought is that even if they seem very inconsistent, that's not because physics is inconsistent, but that's because these are not an apple-to-apple comparison. So maybe we are just looking at different aspects of jet quenching from different observables. And how to move forward is what I want to ask to everybody. So if you really want to have an apple-to-apple comparison, some field-wide efforts are needed, and that's something that we all need to think in the future. So the last one, I said there are 4 methods. So the last one is a clustering sequence independent observable with semi-inclusive approach. That's one way that we can also do the jet substructure measurement. So in Alice reported earlier this year, they reported N subjetness, which is the number of subjet prongs in a jet. So what they report is the tau2 over tau1, and this corresponds to how 2-prong jets appear in heavy ion collisions. And this is a semi-inclusive approach is used. So uncorrelated background contribution is suppressed via semi-inclusive hadron jet correlations. And if you see if this result is consistent with no modification in central heavy ion collisions relative to PTR-PP collisions. So this is the 4th method. And I just prepared one additional slide, which is not in heavy ion collisions, but I thought this is very interesting. So this is the measurement of ZG and RG following splitting consequences. So usually when we measure GG and RG, we measure GG and RG at the first split. But we can do the GG and RG measurement following as we travel along the jet shower. And this is possible in PP. So this is the black is the first split, red is the second split, blue is the third split. So as we go to later and later splits, the GG distribution changes and also RG distribution changes. And it is consistent with our picture because at the beginning is a large and soft angle splitting, but later it's harder and collinear splitting. So it's consistent with our knowledge. And in this measurement, Cambridge-Archon reclustering algorithm is used because angular ordering is a property of the jet shower in vacuum. However, the unfortunate thing is this cannot be really measured in heavy ion collision because medium induced radiation in heavy ion collisions is not expected to satisfy angular ordering. So this is a really uninteresting, I think this is really an interesting observable, but if we really want to do the corresponding measurement in heavy ion collisions, we may think of a better reclustering metric or something, although I don't have a good answer right now. So now let's go to the last part of my talk, so other jet observables. So I just prepared only a few slides. The first is the jet ecoplanarity. So jet ecoplanarity is about angular decorrelation between a trigger particle, which is shown here, and its recall jet. So we measure the delta phi. And by looking at the angular decorrelation or jet ecoplanarity measurement, are we seeing discrete scattering centers or effectively continuous medium. So this can really tell what the microstructure of QGP is. And there has been a few efforts into this observable, such as the Alice publication in 2015 and Star one in 2017. But the most recent Alice preliminary results show that in heavy ion collisions, the delta phi is even more narrower than PP collision. And one of the theory or phenomenology publication explained this as due to negative radiation radiative correction to scared PT square, mean PT square. So this is one of the explanation by phenomenology. And the second observable that I want to mention is the J psi in jets. So this was reported by CMS earlier this year. So they measure the J psi, they identify a J psi, and then reconstruct jets around the J psi. And the Z is the momentum fraction of J psi with respect to the jet. And they measure the RAA as a function of Z. So the lower Z means that the J psi takes the smaller amount of the momentum of the entire jet. And higher Z jet means that the J psi takes the majority of the momentum of the jet. So RAA definitely shows the Z dependence. So J psi produced with a larger degree of surrounding jet activity are more suppressed. So in order to fully interpret this result, we may need to incorporate jet quenching and J psi suppression. So this was reported by the CMS at the LHC, but STAR is also working on it. So at the 500 GeV PP, we have reported the J psi fragmentation, jet fragmentation, and further results are coming at weak energies as well. And there are also many other observables in the field of jet physics in heavy ion collisions, such as fragmentation function or jet shape, and there are many others, but I just can't explain everything due to the shortage of the time. So I'll go to my conclusion and summary slide. So jets provide unique tools to study hot dense QCD medium because jets in vacuum and in medium are theoretically well controlled in many aspects, but not all. And the jets have a broad kinematic reach, so they can prove the medium over a wide range in scale. And they have complex structure. So we have many complementary observables that probe similar physics. So in the end, we may have to have a consistent picture. And I talked about the current experimental status of the jet measurement in heavy ion collisions. So various experimental data are available right now, but the community-wide efforts are needed for apple-to-apple comparisons. And also, we are expanding our phase space into even lower jet energy or lower jet momentum and larger jet radius. And I think they are a very interesting way to further extend our knowledge. And but still there are some key challenges. And I think they are written here. So rigorous comparison of experimental results and theoretical calculations are definitely needed. And we have to tie together multiple observables sensitive to same overlying physics, and we require a consistency. So in order to satisfy these two challenges or to solve these two challenges, get the answer for these two challenges, we need a coordinated effort of entire experiment and theory communities. And one of the examples of such efforts is the JASCAPE. So JASCAPE framework is the general purpose Monte Carlo event generator in heavy ion collisions. So this basically gives a framework to compare theory and the experimental results. And this is part of our community-wide effort. And this is my last slide. So I'm looking forward to the future of jet measurement in heavy ion physics. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hansel. A very broad and comprehensive survey of the field. Questions for Hansel? So while people are thinking, I'll ask. So if you go back to go to your conclusion slide. Yeah. So you say rigorous comparison of experimental theory calculations, and we all know about Jetscape, but you presented really quite a broad array of results. If you had to choose, how would you start? How would you broaden the spectrum of comparisons? Which would you be your 2 or 3 preferred observables to try to understand in a coherent way that aren't being studied in that fashion today?
Oh, that's a very good question. But okay, this is really my personal perspective, and my answer may not be the correct one and may not be what other people think. But if you, to achieve the goal, at least what I want to avoid at the beginning is I want to start something other than just substructure observables. Because in just substructure observables, there are I think that there are like too many things that we have to take into our account. So we have to control some background, and we don't really fully understand what the background does and what other like ordering does. And there are many unknowns in just substructure observable. So I don't think that's a very good way of the very good starting point. So I want to start with something other than just substructure observable in this effort.
Okay, other questions for Hansel? Feng, Wenjing, yes.
Very nice talk. I have a quick question on I think that is Atlas measurement. The RAA is function of the distance between the reclustered jet.
Sure.
Yes. So if we, so really like that, like single isolated subjet, the RAA it's like significantly higher.
Right.
But then like once one jump from that point to the next one, the trend is not as clear. So is there any like intuitive like sort of answer or explanation for this kind of dependence?
Well, okay. I can try. I mean, I may not be correct, but I can try. So let's say the medium resolution kind of matters, I think. So if the medium can distinguish like the a single prong jet and 2-prong jet, if the medium resolution is small enough, this 2-prong jet, each jet is considered as a single jet. So they are quenched harder. I mean, quenching each one separately means that the whole thing is quenched more. So by looking at these 2-prong jet and comparing with the 1-prong jet, this 2-prong jet is a quenching like 2 separate entities. So they may quench more than this single prong jet. So the lowest bin, the square root d12 equals 0 is really this picture. And the other bins are this picture, maybe narrower or wider, but there's no dependence, but at least they are kind of distinguished entities. I mean, this jet and these 2 prong jets are different. So maybe the resolution scale can really distinguish these 2 different entities. And that's a kind of my answer, but it really depends on, I mean, I'm not entirely sure, but that's my guess.
Okay, I see. I also saw like then like for the 2-prong, like or say, when there are 2 jets reclustered, like it will be like a more suppression for wider angle.
Right.
And here it looks rather flat.
Right. The distance between the 2 doesn't really matter in these measurements.
Okay.
Could you go back to the definition of D12? I think you had on a previous slide. As you were talking, I was getting a little, do you have a formula? There we are. So it's really the opening angle scaled by the lower PT.
I see. It's not really just opening angle. Got it.
It's a momentum bend, but it's really striking how rapid, I think Wenjing already commented, it's striking how rapid the transition is. So if there's, okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Kyle, you had a question.
Sorry, maybe you just answered the question, but So this reclustered jet, you said it's kind of different than R equals 1 jet. So if you do R equals 1 jet first and then recluster the subjets inside, you're saying
it's not the same.
different.
Right.
How is it different again? Like what is the intuition of doing it for R equals 2 first and then reclustering for a bigger jet? You said there is some trimming involved.
Right. So maybe I was not clear when I first explained. So the first step that Atlas did was they only selected high momentum particles. This is not jet, but
I see.
starting with the high momentum particle and using, I mean, they reconstruct jets with the high momentum particles only. So from the beginning, these lower momentum particles are already trimmed out. So there is no low momentum particle from the beginning.
What if you do that from the beginning, but get R equals 1 jet and then do the reclustering of the subjets with R equal 0.2? Would you get the same thing, or is it different still?
So I think there are some reasons why they did it, because by doing this, I mean, by removing the lower momentum parts, it's more clear. I mean, so even in heavy ion background, basically, if you remove low momentum particle, you just remove most of the background. And I mean, it's my guess, but I think it has a much benefit when they do the unfolding. I mean, these are unfolded results. So if we do not remove like a lower momentum part,
sorry. What I'm asking is, like, you remove the low momentum part, but do it with R equals 1 directly in the beginning, and then recluster with the subjects of R equals 0.2. So like here you said you get R equals 0.2 jets first, and then use a list of jets of smaller jets, you get a bigger jet, right?
Okay.
You get the bigger jet first and then recluster the particles inside for smaller jets.
Yes. Thank you for the question. That's exactly what Star does.
So they are different.
Yeah, but Atlas is different, but I'm not from Atlas. I mean, this is a kind of stupid answer, but I don't know why. I mean, what the difference will be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of intuitively the two procedures shouldn't commute, but I'm not exactly sure like what they would.
Yeah, I also don't have a good intuition about this.
I see.
Sorry.
Thank you, but the talk was very, very clear.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Hensel? Okay, well, thanks very much, Hensel, and thank you, everyone, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.